Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Seagram Pierce. Today we're going to look at 5 different tips of how you can improve your lighting as a photographer today. But stay tuned because I've got an extra tip for you at the end and I think you're going to like that one. We're photographers. We're all constantly trying to make our light better in some way. I know I'm definitely always looking at different lighting setups. Often just when paging through a magazine, I like to deconstruct what I'm seeing and seeing if there's maybe something there that I can steal and use in my own setups. These 5 tips come from both in film and in stills, so try some of them depending on where you are or what you're already currently doing. Now, tip number 1. Move your light closer to your subject. When your lighting is quite far away, very often you'll find is that it looks a little bit harder. And this is because the apparent size of the light source is now quite small in relation to your subject. That lighting source is now much larger in proportion to your subject. And the further away that moves, the smaller it becomes and the harder that perceived light is. Personally, there's been so many times where I'm shooting in studio and I can see that one of my lighting modifiers is actually clipping into the frame. I don't care about this because I can take that out. What I care about more is that light quality is really the best that I can get it. Another benefit to bringing your lights in closer is suddenly you don't need such strong, powerful lights anymore. If it took a 2000 watt bulb to light a frame, now you only need 400 or even 600 watts of light to get the same effect. So you can start using your smaller lights in a much more effective way. And lastly on this tip is you really do get much more control over your lighting, and that's ultimately what we're always after. Tip number 2, don't put up all your lights at once. If you're lucky enough to be rocking multiple lights, resist the temptation to get them all out and use them every time. One of the reasons why I feel that it's better to start off building your lights slowly is that often we want elegant lighting setup. We don't really want to put up all these lights and just fill every conceivable part of our frame with lights. That's not really lighting, that's just mass murder of lighting. Personally, some of the most striking and elegant lighting setups that I've had have been really simple. Here you can see this shoot I did with just one light. One light on the model and one light on the background, just to add some sort of graduation on the gray that I was achieving in the background. That's so simple. Never buy into this idea that, oh, if I had one more light, if only I had 5 lights, I could do something great. Trust me, you could have all the lights in the world and still not be creating beautiful setups. So start your lighting one light at a time. One key light, one hair light, or one rim light, or one background light. Just start at one light and see what it does first. And I can tell you, more often than not, I've put up maybe 1, maybe 2 lights and actually been really enjoying what I'm seeing. Just like when you're cooking in the kitchen, you can't throw every ingredient into the pot at once and expect it to come out great. You need to add in one ingredient at a time as they need it. All right, tip number 3. Heighten your light source. Now this might seem like a bit of a strange one, but hear me out. There's a bit of natural science that goes into this one. Perhaps when we've just gotten our lights or we've seen those lighting setups where someone comes and they put their subject in the studio and exactly at eye line and 45 degrees to left and right of the subject, they put a light and boom, there we go. We've got light everywhere. That is going to be some of the flattest lighting you will ever see. And you know what? If this is what you need, great. But you know what? I'm in the business of crafting light. So I'm always going to try and make that a little bit more interesting to look at. One of the best tips that I got many years ago was this commercial photographer. He said to me, when you stand outside and you look around you, there's only 2 times in a day where lighting is really at eye level, and that's sunrise and sunset. Every other point, your lighting is actually coming in from an angle and lighting everything we see from the top down. So I've applied that to my photography style. My lighting is always coming from the top down. I almost never light from bottom up, or especially not from eye line. This is a visually comfortable lighting setup to see because we see it all around us when we look around outside. So when I'm doing my lighting setups, I want to use something that feels natural to the eye. I've been using this tip since almost day 1. And it has really improved my lighting setups when perhaps I'm looking at something and it's just not looking good, like it's okay, but it's not great. I will take my lighting sources higher because what that does is it starts contouring everything that's on your subject, whether it's high cheekbones or it's perhaps a jawline. These are all things that I can start shaping by taking my light from high down onto my subject. Here's a tip I want you to try next time for your lighting setups. Whatever light height you normally use, take it up another 20-30%. See what it looks like, even if this means lighting your subject directly from the top. You'd be surprised at how beautiful that is as a starting setup for your lighting, and then add in all your other light sources. Tip number 4 is backlighting can dramatically improve the focus in your frame. Backlighting is something I started playing with when I started out, and it became one of those almost signature styles to my work. I love shooting into my light source. I love shooting into the sun or putting a flash behind my model. I became quite obsessed with how this changed up the style and the feel of what my lighting was in a frame. I started developing this near obsession with taming this wild backlighting that would come into my frame and would often have very unexpected results. Backlighting does a lot of very cool things, and one of them is the way they illuminate your subject. It gives your subject this beautiful halo outline, which really can help knock that subject out from the background. Some of the best examples of natural rim lighting that you can steal for trying to recreate is at sunrise and sunset. Backlighting also gives us a chance to play around with lighting ratios and lighting balance with kicking some of that light back into our subject. You'd be wasting light if you didn't try bounce some of that back into your subject. Now, because that light is bounced, it's not going to be as powerful as the light is that's hitting your subject in the back. So now you start getting these things called lighting ratios. Tip number 5 is you're not going hard enough with your light. I hear you, we spend an inordinate amount of time researching modifiers and softboxes on how to soften our light. So why now make it harder? The most natural example of hard lighting that we have is the sun. But now often we might look at that and go, well, no, everyone has the sun. I don't want hard lighting, I want something else. But hold up for a second. Hard lighting really gives you a certain quality that you don't get with soft lighting. And every now and again, it's a beautiful break stylistically to have hard lighting coming in that's not always just soft. It's quite a crisp and vibrant texture to it. Because at the microscopic level now, that lighting is casting micro shadows on every texture that it hits, whether it's fabric or even skin pores. It gives you a chance to really create some more dramatic looking lighting setups. But now with your newfound knowledge on lighting, you can create something that feels a lot sexier, but still with that hard lighting and gobos. Now, gobos is that fancy word that the film guys have for something you put between your light and your subject. It casts a shadow in a distinct shape, or it just allows light to enter through a short sliver. You get some fancy ones that might create the shape of a window, but you know what? Often when you watch the film guys work, at least on sets, they'll use branches and they'll use just pieces of old netting to put in front of their lights to act as gobos, just to give that light a different and more natural characteristic. It's not just the singular light source, you're breaking it up a little bit and giving it a little bit of interesting dynamic and shape. This lets you be super creative with shadows. You can do it in beauty, in portraits. If you look at so many photographers, a lot of how their style comes about is from how they block lighting, not always where they put their lighting. Bonus tip number 6, ditch your flashes for some LED lights. I love how there's a difference in the way that lighting is applied in film and in photography. The one deals with light that happens like that at 2/50th of a second, and the other deals with a constant light that you can see all the time. This really translates into a different atmosphere of lighting. And again, this is something that we can choose to do as photographers to vary up the style that we have in our arsenal. Whether you're buying a really expensive LED setup or you're buying a cheap knockoff brand, just start playing around with it. So you'll need to obviously adjust your camera settings to compensate for now a less powerful light source. But in today's cameras, they can handle high ISO in studio, and also you're going to be able to see exactly what your lighting is doing. It's really a fantastic tool to learn how to see light. Thank you for joining me on these 6 tips on how to improve your lighting setups. I would love to hear which ones you're going to be trying next time. Let me know down in the comments below. Now, some of these tips in this video come from my ebook, 10 Things You're Doing Wrong in Your Photography, but How to Quickly Fix Them. The link to that is in the description below. Check that out. Now, if you enjoyed this video, check here for more tips and tricks on how to get better at your photography, lighting, and business. I'll see you there.